vamos chamar Janette Sadiq-Khan, que é secretária de Transportes de Nova York, conhecida como a secretária das bikes. O programa de transportes projetado por Janette inclui a implantação de 450 quilômetros de ciclovias e 50 quilômetros de corredores de ônibus, e transformou as praças de Manhattan, inclusive a Times Square, em áreas públicas exclusivas para pedestres. Janette, please.
When we think about city streets and the newer concept of complete streets, we're generally talking about designing for a variety of uses and designing streets not only for today, but for the future. And we're really talking about a 21st century update of a resource that's really been fixed in time and virtually unexamined for 50 years. Our streets need to reflect the needs of 2013, not 2030. And this is important because we live in the urban age, the urban century. For the first time in history, most of the world's population lives in cities. And the UN estimates that this population will double in the next 40 years to 6.3 billion. So the design of cities is a key issue for our present and for our future. As you can see here, these are some of our top-line goals: reducing traffic fatalities in half, treating our streets as public space, double bike commuting, and implementing a rapid bus system. All of these goals point to complete streets. And I think in addition to our policy work, one of our greatest innovations has been the transformation of streets virtually overnight. You can see this is Union Square on the left, and instead of wading through years and years of planning studies, we used paint and stone blocks to redefine a space in close to real time. And I don't know how it is in Sao Paulo, but in New York City, I think people stopped believing for a while that things could change. We were on our 4th groundbreaking of the 2nd Avenue subway. And so the idea of Plan YC, a greater, greener reality, didn't seem possible. But this really showed that you can change things quickly. And the proof of concept isn't a computer model. It's actually the real world performance. And if it doesn't work, you can change a feature. You can change the traffic, you can change the parking. This is a project we did in Brooklyn in Dumbo. Over a weekend, transformed the parking lot into a new plaza with low-cost materials and worked with the local businesses. And in the 3 years since we've implemented the project, retail sales have increased 172%, 2 times that of other areas in the same neighborhood. We've done it on a bigger scale in Times Square, and this approach allowed us to work much more closely, the temporary materials, trying it as a pilot, seeing if it worked. You know, we put out those orange barrels for Times Square, and we shut them, and it was fantastic. People just materialized out of nowhere. It was like Star Trek episode, all the people suddenly in the street. But, a lot of big projects actually have surprises. And one of the surprises with Times Square was we didn't have the street furniture arrive in time. And so we had to go to a hardware store, and we ordered hundreds of lawn chairs from the local hardware store and put them in the street. And the big story became the lawn chairs. Did you like the lawn chairs? Did you like the color of the lawn chairs? And it wasn't about the closing of Broadway to cars. It was about the lawn chairs. So I say, if you have a big project, you should think about lawn chairs. The concept of a complete street is you do take care of everyone. And I think that New York has taken this idea further than anyone else. This is my favorite street in New York. I know it seems crazy, but this is First Avenue, and you can see on the left the protected bike lane, and it's protected by the floating lane of parked cars. You can see the pedestrian island that anchors it, which we put at the key intersections all the way up our protected lanes. You can see the 3 lanes of moving traffic. You can see the dedicated bus lane and then the parking. You probably can't hear the chirping birds and everybody going, ooh la la, but it definitely feels very different than it did when there were 8 lanes of moving traffic. It's made traffic better, it's made our buses move better, injuries are down, strong economic returns, 47% fewer commercial vacancies on this strip since the project has been implemented. I'm going to talk about cycling and walking in a bit, but I want to talk a little bit about the role of transit in complete streets. New York City has the largest bus fleet in North America, and it has the slowest bus speeds at 8 miles an hour. You can actually walk across town faster than taking the bus. And some people say that the only way to get across town is to be born there, which is really not the mark of a world-class city. 3 million people use it every day, and in terms of that usage, I think it's common sense, and I think it's basic fairness to prioritize their travel on city streets. And so we work to create a new service called Select Bus Service on some of our busiest corridors, and it includes dedicated lanes. You pay before you get on the bus at a kiosk, which is a big part of the delay in bus travel. The lanes are enforced by cameras. You can load on all 3 doors. Great results, ridership way up, travel time way down. 98% of New Yorkers support this. I don't know of anything that New Yorkers support by 98%. Also great for business, 71% improvement in retail sales along this corridor in the Bronx. We're also moving along, extending the sidewalks to meet the bus, to make it easy for them. They don't have to pull in and out. They can move quickly, and additional room for pedestrians on busy sidewalks. We're also putting new street furniture at our bus stops, which I think reflects our effort to make the public realm attractive as well as functional. We're also bringing good aesthetic design to our streets for those of you that have been in New York before. How many of you have been to New York? Oh, excellent. How many of you have been to New York since 2008? That's pretty good, but we need all of you to get to New York. But if you were there before, you would have seen that most of our bike racks look like a crazed plumber, just stuck like inverted pipes on the streets of New York City. They were very ugly. So we did a design competition. We've got these great new bike racks. We've got 8,000 of them, which we've installed to date. We've also adapted some of our bus shelters to create good bike parking sites. If a complete street accommodates all types of users, a complete parking lane should accommodate bike racks as well as parking for cars. All of these projects are installed with the cooperation of local businesses and community boards. Our latest addition to our cycling infrastructure was the launch of City Bike, which we did this summer, and which is the largest bike share system in North America. Mayor Bloomberg checked out the first bike. We have 6,000 bikes and 330 stations at no cost to taxpayers. It was completely paid for by sponsorship from Citibank and from MasterCard. And the fees that you pay is $100 for a whole year-long pass, $25 for a week, $10 for a day. Those fees pay for the operation of the system, and it's expected to generate a profit. In the first 100 days, over 80,000 annual members have signed up. In the first 100 days, 225,000 daily and weekly members. And they've taken over 3 million trips, and they've ridden over 7 million miles, which is, if you took a bike and you rode it around the earth, you'd go 280 times around the earth.
O corredor de ônibus é uma ótima ideia e pode funcionar em várias localidades e não funcionar em outras. A mistura de casas e comércio pode ser fantástica em várias regiões. Fechar pequenas áreas para o pedestre, não fechar outras. A bicicleta, onde fazer, onde funciona mais. E para isso é preciso medir. É preciso medir, e não só o impacto na velocidade do trânsito. Medir o impacto na vida do pedestre, medir os acidentes, medir o impacto sobre o comércio. É preciso medir. E é preciso que esse dado seja público. E os dados do Brasil, com frequência, não são públicos. Eles não estão disponíveis. Disponibilizar esses microdados para que as áreas de pesquisa dos diversos institutos possam avaliar e mensurar. E com transparência, com tranquilidade, com serenidade, progressivamente, experimentando soluções particulares, porque os casos são particulares, a gente possa descobrir o que funciona, quando funciona, onde não funciona, o que tem que ser expandido e o que tem que ser fechado.
Times Square had been a problem that was hidden in plain sight for 200 years, since the street grid was developed in 1811 in New York City. And the street grid in New York City is north, south, and east-west, which is the most efficient way to move traffic through a system. The only road that was left not part of the grid was Broadway, which cuts diagonally through the city. So it was really an opportunity that was hidden in plain sight. People had tried for years to try to fix the problem of Times Square, because every time Broadway cuts through the grid, it creates congestion hotspots, because you have 3 intersections that you have to move traffic in instead of 2 directions of traffic that you have to move traffic in. So we had these congested hotspots, and people, Times Square had been chaos for years and years. And I was talking with Mayor Bloomberg about what we could do, and no matter of changing turn lanes or traffic signals or anything that traditional traffic engineering had recommended had worked. And so we took a much bigger picture view and said, how do we make this work? And the bigger picture view was actually the street was out of balance. 90% of the street was dedicated to cars, and when 90% of the people used the space. So we needed to flip that balance. And we decided to experiment and close Broadway from 42nd to 47th Street with temporary materials, paint and tables and chairs and stones. And I remember going to City Hall and pitching this to the mayor and his team, and the police commissioner and the sanitation commissioner and the fire commissioner, saying yeah, we're going to close a road and it's all going to work better, and they thought I was a little off my rocker there. But the mayor then went around the table with his deputies, and I might add that he did this in the middle of an election campaign, in the middle of his re-election campaign. We were closing Broadway. And so he went around the table, and everybody was not supportive of this idea. And my heart sort of sank. But I understood it, and they were all saying, well, maybe we'll do it later. And the mayor turned to me and he said, I don't ask my commissioners to do the right thing according to the political calendar. I ask my commissioners to do the right thing, period. And he shook my hand. It still kind of gives me shivers when I think about that. So I think a big part of it was he was comfortable with the idea that we were going to do this and we were going to measure whether it worked or not. And we would look at traffic safety, and we would look at injuries, we would look at mobility, we would look at economic performance, and we were going to measure that, and we were going to do a report to the public. And after 6 months, if it worked, great, we'd proceed, and if it didn't work, we'll take it out. no harm, no foul. You can just erase it. It's not that hard to do. And it's really important point because what that did was it really lowered the anxiety that people had about trying this new project, because you could change it, you could turn it back, and nobody could argue that Times Square was working and then it wasn't worth trying something new, right? So it was a really important strategy for us. And the idea of showing what a place can look like was important, because then other people wanted it. You had something to point to, a real world example, not just something in a rendering or a design drawing that's mocked up. And so as more people saw plazas that were springing up, they wanted them. As more people saw the bike lanes springing up, they wanted them. And so it had this really great beneficial, momentum that came along with that early experimentation and trial that really built support on the ground for this approach and these kinds of projects.